Welcome to The Explainer. I am so glad you're joining us today because we're tackling something pretty profound. It's a deep, emotional mystery that touches the very core of the human experience. We're going to be blending philosophical inquiry, a bit of scientific perspective, and some real spiritual wonder. And hey, if you're someone who loves structured learning, you are absolutely going to appreciate how we've mapped out the answers for you today.
So here's the big question we're unpacking. Is there an afterlife for our pets? It's a deeply personal and honestly a pretty haunting question that almost every animal lover asks when faced with that crushing grief of losing a companion. We pour so much of our hearts into these relationships, right? So when they end, it's completely natural to wonder, does that connection continue somewhere else? To help us figure this out, we're drawing insights from Thomas Alethia's really comprehensive guide, 12 Steps to a Good Life, which weaves together some incredibly diverse perspectives on mortality.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our source text actually kicks things off with a pretty heartbreaking childhood memory. The author recalls being just a 7-year-old boy whose beloved dog Sam was tragically hit by a car and killed. And when this grieving little boy innocently said he wanted to see his dog in heaven, a religious woman in a long black dress delivered this incredibly stark, dogmatic judgment. She just told him matter-of-factly that Sam wouldn't be there because animals do not have souls.
But you know what's so telling? It's the author's reaction to that harsh statement. He realized, at 7, I knew better. Even as a little kid, he experienced this intuitive, internal rebellion against that rigid ideology. That singular, really painful moment didn't just define his childhood grief, it actually sparked a lifelong, courageous inquiry into mortality, the nature of the soul, and what really happens when our physical bodies finally fail.
Section 1, Materialism versus Mystery.
To truly understand this debate, we kind of need to zoom out to the two main ways humanity views death, because this deeply personal question about our pets is actually part of a much broader philosophical debate about consciousness itself. On one side, we have the clinical, materialist view. This perspective suggests that we're basically just destined for rot and decay. It argues that near-death experiences, those famous tunnels of light or sudden feelings of peace, aren't spiritual journeys at all. Instead, materialists say they're just abnormal cell activity from a lack of oxygen. They claim it's literally just hallucinations of a dying brain flooded with natural chemicals that mimic ketamine or LSD. But then, on the other side, we have the spiritual view. This perspective frames death not as a final absolute end, but as a transition. It's an enduring mystery that exists way beyond the reach of physical measurement or clinical labs. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is a crucial insight from Carl Sagan. Sagan was, of course, one of the most famous scientists of the modern era, a guy deeply rooted in the material universe. Yet he actually rejected absolute atheism, asking, why are you in such a hurry to make up your mind? The text points out a really critical logical boundary here. Science is the absolute perfect tool for measuring the physical universe. But by definition, spiritual matters are non-physical, so physical instruments are entirely useless for measuring them. Absolute scientific denials of an afterlife carry just as little weight as rigid dogmatic guarantees.
Section 2, Unceasing Evolution.
This brings us to a much more expansive way of thinking. Let's shift our focus back to our animal companions by exploring some ancient metaphysical concepts. These ideas frame death not as a terrifying void, but as an ongoing process. Think about the metaphor of the caterpillar and the butterfly. If a caterpillar could think, it would probably view its time in the chrysalis as death, right? A total, terrifying end to its existence. But from a broader perspective, we know it's a wondrous continuation. It's a transformation into an entirely new state of being. What looks like an end is actually a pretty magnificent beginning.
And this brilliantly illustrates the concept of epectasis. Developed by St. Gregory of Nyssa way back in the 4th century, epectasis is this beautiful idea that existence is an unceasing evolution toward eternal happiness. It suggests that consciousness isn't just static. If we live in an infinite multiverse where every possibility exists, then the journey of consciousness, and yes, that includes the souls of our pets, is continually growing. It's endlessly transforming and infinitely evolving right alongside everything else in existence.
Section 3, the Zen of Pets.
But hey, what if trying to perfectly define exactly what that afterlife looks like is actually the wrong approach altogether? Let's introduce a little cognitive pattern interrupt here. I want you to really let this question sink in. Can an animal be awakened? An insect? A blade of grass? This is a serious Zen aphorism.
It's asking us to look past our very human-centric view of the universe and reflect on the deep, mysterious interconnectedness of all life. Is the spark of existence in a dog or a cat fundamentally different from the spark in us? And here is the punchline to that Zen thought. If you say yes or no, then you are sleeping. It's a gentle but pretty firm reminder that our desperate human demand for absolute certainty often completely blinds us to a greater reality. We want a neat, clearly defined answer about the afterlife to soothe our anxiety, but the truth? The mystery is just way too vast to be boxed into a simple yes or no. Trying to force an answer distracts us from the sheer beauty of the present mystery.
Section 4. Grief and Universal Connection. Let's bring all this abstract philosophy back down to earth, to a really grounded personal reality. Because while philosophy is beautiful to think about, the actual pain of losing a pet is visceral. It is incredibly real. The author shares a recent, poignant experience of adult grief. He describes losing a beloved pet, watching the light literally fade from her eyes, and just feeling the profound, crushing weight of that loss. He writes that the 7 years they shared passed, quote, like a warm summer day. It's such a heartbreaking acknowledgement that no matter how much philosophical understanding we might have, the grief we feel is a testament to the immense value of that shared time.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the core lessons we learn from these companions. First off, they might only be a small part of our long lives, but to them, we are their entire universe. Second, because they are so completely dependent on us, our treatment of them acts like a perfect mirror. It clearly reflects exactly who we are and the actual state of our own souls. And third, loving them reveals our deep, undeniable connection to the entire universe.
To really drive that universal connection home, our source material reminds us of this amazing and honestly very comforting scientific fact. The molecules in your body and the molecules in the body of your pet were forged in the heart of stars. We are quite literally made of stardust. Think about that. The exact same cosmic material that makes up the infinite universe makes up the bond you share with your companion. You are physically and energetically tied to the cosmos.
Section 5. Love as the final answer.
As we wrap up our explainer today, we are guided to a final, truly comforting insight. Look, we might not be able to put the afterlife under a microscope, but that definitely doesn't mean we're left without an answer on how to live right now. So, the crucial point is captured beautifully in this quote from B.C. Chase. At the end of your days, when you take stock of your life and what it meant, there's really only one thing that matters, and that's how much you loved. We can't know the exact architecture of what comes after death for ourselves or our pets, but we do know what matters right this very second. The love you give to your animal companions and the love they give back to you is real, it's measurable in the heart, and it is deeply profound. So I'm going to leave you with this question to ponder. Knowing that the mystery of life and death is far larger than any of us can comprehend, how fully are you loving your companions today?